Every organization runs on data, but having data does not mean you can trust it. Even when data is brought together in a warehouse, data lake, or lakehouse, teams still need to understand its meaning, ownership, quality, dependencies, and what happens when something breaks. That's where LakeLogic comes in. LakeLogic is an operational trust layer for the data estate. It helps organizations govern critical data, manage exceptions, coordinate remediation, and prove that the right controls are actually working. We have an accelerator that builds governed lakehouses for organizations who do not have one. Today, I'm going to focus on the governance features within the platform, starting with data contracts. Contracts are one of the cornerstones and foundations of LakeLogic. They define what your data should look like and the criteria it must meet to be processed into your lakehouse. The application works by querying your metadata, that's the information about your data, from your code source control, not the data itself. So if I come into Contract Studio, we have a hypothetical company called RideFlow, which is a ride-hailing app similar to Uber. You can see the typical medallion layers here, bronze, silver, and gold. If I go into my silver layer, you'll notice some documentation levels here aren't complete. It essentially describes the data within the system. So if I was to click on RideFlow trips, I get a view of my contract. I can see that the developer hasn't documented the structures within this data set for the RideFlow trips, but that's not a problem. AI can help. If I click on the auto doc button here, one of our agents will look at the metadata within your table structure and return to you the table name, the column names, as you can see there. They are human view viewable. As you can see, I can modify these if I wish, but they look pretty good. If I'm happy with those, I can accept those. And now I've got descriptions for all my data for within this frame. The contract itself is over here. What you see here is the YAML structure, which essentially is the Python structure that informs the structure that informs the Python and how the application will behave. But you don't need to be a Python developer to use this. If you look at the model, you can see all the fields here. You can specify the criteria. Is it required or not? What data type it is? A description for it? Is it PII or not? You can do all this automatic. You can do all this through the user interface. Any transformations that will happen on the data, quality rules, compliance rules, as you can see, EU Act, you can see GDPR, the compliance rules that you want to apply to that data, and what it connects to. This will normally be automatically generated for you, but if you want to modify it, you have the ability to come in here and do that. It creates pull requests for this using the usual GitHub components to actually have these this information added to your workflow without updating your code directly. Now you can see I've got a pending PR in draft. Now we have a bit of understanding of what a contract is. I'm going to talk a little about quality gates. Quality gates are the criteria your data must meet before it can go between your medallions. So before data come into your bronze, your silver, or your gold. And we have a number of different criteria we already have generated here. So for example, owner required. And I can modify this to see what the rules are. We've said that all data for all layers must have an owner. We've enabled it. It applies to all the layers. And we can have a notification if data does not have that criteria in it, and so on. then we have a whole series of different quality gates already built into the system that your organization can apply to your data to ensure correctness and compliance through your processing of your lakehouse. Once your once your quality gates are set, and now you have an understanding of contracts, we're going to talk a little bit about lineage. Lineage is how your data flows from through your system. From your source system, here we have the RideFlow app itself, but that could be a CRM system, a case management system, a financial system, and how that data flows all the way through your bronze, silver, and gold data, all the way up to the report that actually reports on it. So, for example, this executive daily KPI dashboard. Many organizations have many sources and many uses for that data, so you could filter to a specific product. So I'm only interested today in the driver scorecard, and I can see how the data flows in from my ride hailing app into my driver scorecard. It can also do things like show me where PII data is flowing through my system. PII data should be obfuscated so it doesn't end up in an actual dashboard or in the lakehouse at all. So to address this, I can look at one of these, I can edit the contract, go to my compliance, and I can get AI to look through that and fix that issue for me. You could manually also add it to your YAML, but I expect in most cases you would probably just use the UI to do it. Another important feature is how retention rules can be applied to domains within your warehouse. So I click on my domain config, I can specify my retention rules for that information. So we can say 7 days for bronze, 90 days for silver, and 7 years for gold. It's very important for GDPR because you don't want to have sensitive data in your reporting system if you don't have a good reason for it, for example. Now that we have all our compliance rules set, we have our governance center here. In my risk and compliance center, I can see all the different data contracts I have and the policies applied to it. So I can see that my retention period here is 90 days for my rider flows. I can see my daily metrics are held for 7 years for my rider daily metrics. And so on, I can see the completeness of the contract for that data. I've got my contract health. I've got my personal data impact, whether it's protected or not. I've got my quality coverage, and I've got my data classification. And I can export all of these, which would be very useful for audit purposes. If you're asked how you can prove that you meet this criteria, you can show that right from source to how that data has been used within your organization. And that was a quick overview of some of the features that we have within LakeLogic to help you with governance of data within your organization for reporting and AI consumption. If you want to speak to us further about this, or you need a lakehouse being built to help you with your reporting and AI needs, you can contact us by going on our website, lakelogic.io. Thank you for listening.